Hello and welcome to this lesson. We will talk about the human machine and its 5 centers. And I think we can all agree upon the fact that our reality is made up of many different layers. Our universe, our body, our life in general, with its connections and its relationships, has many different things to it, many different layers to it. So it doesn't matter if we are aware of all those rules, of all those functions. They happen either way. But the more we are conscious of them, the more we can transform them in a way that can benefit us. In esoteric schools, it is well known that the human has 5 brains or 5 centers. In total, they are the intellectual in our head, in the top of the spine, the motoric or movement center, the emotional center in our heart and solar plexus, the instinctive center at the lowest part of the spine, and the sexual center at the sexual organs. Even though they have a specific location, at the time they are active, they envelop the whole body and control it. So it is very necessary to study those functions by observing them, to divide them in the right way, and to see each one as something separate. And each of those functions has its own speciality and its own profession, what it is assigned to do. The instinctive center, for example, can exist without the other centers. The moving and the emotional center can exist without the intellectual, and so on. So we could see all those as living beings inside of us, as living people. The instinctive, moving man, the sexual man, the intellectual man, the emotional or sentimental man. So if we look at ourselves with this perspective, with this point of view, then we see very fast which is the main mistakes that we make about ourselves, and that is that we take us as one, that we take ourselves as a unity. So we could say that the human machine is a very complicated one. Even so that we could even say that it is a factory, which consists of many different machines in it, and they all work at different speeds, at different conditions, and with different fuels. So with this said, let's dive into each center, and I will show you how you can balance those. Of course, if you want to balance something, the reason is because the things are unbalanced. I think it is obvious that probably all the humans are very unbalanced, and how we can transform it is by being conscious of what is happening inside of us. So the intellectual center, let's start with that, is the slowest of all those centers, and it is the attributes of it are the thoughts, the categorization that we made, all the concepts that we have, the ideas, the logic, and with the intellect we calculate everything. We build structure to everything. We categorize everything, which is of course good when it is needed, but not necessary when it is not needed, even though we cannot put it to an end when it is not needed. So what is also very obvious in this center is that this duality that we have. What I mean is, for example, in a decision that we cannot decide, we are stuck between those two things, between yes or no, and we don't see the middle truth because we don't see it with intuition, we see it only with calculations. So how we can balance this center is by meditation, by calming the mind, and that we do by realizing that there is no need to think, not by force. We can also reflect a lot. That helps this center a lot, to see what we have done, our past mistakes, and to try to make them better, and to be conscious of all the actions that we take in a day, for example. To read something good, sacred scriptures, esoteric books, all of those. And good conversations, in-depth conversations that help us a lot. And if we misuse this center, we develop insanity. Also, the misuse would be to study too much, to overuse this center, which can lead to different kinds of sicknesses to it. So let's move on. The movement center, or motoric. This is the third fastest, and with the instinctive together, they are have the same speed. And here we have the activities of motoric habits, of mechanical imitations that we do, for example, as a child. And in relation to the intellectual, if we learn to drive at the beginning we do everything with our intellect. Our intellect tells us what we should do at which time, but with time, this becomes something for the movement center. It becomes a habit to it, and then we don't have to think about it anymore. This is how you can see it. And how we can harmonize the center is by doing activities, by sport, but not by extreme sport, because that would do the opposite effect, but by harmonic movement, by dancing, by taking a walk in nature, and of course exercise, but not always going over the limit to harm our body. Yes, and the different things as handwork, maybe also playing instruments, that helps this center a lot. Then the third would be the emotional center, which is the second fastest. This center, its activity is obviously the emotions and feelings that we have, and the duality that it has would be very simple: positive and negative emotions. So the harmonization of this center is through objective art, which is art with purpose, art with a meaning, art with mysticism, and art which nourishes our soul. Poetry, good music, again, this goes with art, good music that nourishes the soul and not our desires, and the meditation, of course, but meditation with the focus in our feelings, in our emotions, and seeing how they are and why they are the way that they are. Yes, when we misuse this center, we get heart problems, heart diseases, stomach problems, bowel diseases, stuff like this. Then we move to the instinctive center, again, the lowest part of our spine. And this is, like I have said, with the moving center together, it is the third fastest. Here we have very fundamental things. We breathe, it controls the breath, the digestion, the bloodstream, the five centers, the five senses, I mean. And the duality here would be pleasure and pain. How to harmonize this center would be to do self-remembering, to remember ourselves when we are in a situation, when we are doing something. And to be always, to have an anchor in the moment, to not be misled by the past or by the future, but to be stuck in here, in the present. And to connect or reconnect with nature. We get a lot of vitality from our planet, and if we connect with nature, for example, walking barefoot, we get a lot of those energies inside of our body, and we give a lot of negative energies, which is built up through our phones, all the electricity that we use, computers and stuff like this, and we give it back to the earth and receive vitality. And the education, the five senses, which is being aware and conscious of the impressions that we take, everything that goes inside through our ears, our nose, our eyes, what we taste and what we feel. To do this in a conscious way, to be present at the moment when we experience those things. And if we misuse this center, we would get a lot of sicknesses. We would develop instinctive brutality and criminal, criminal habits. Yes. Then the last center would be the sexual center, which is the fastest actually. And the reason being is you know this, that for example men, at the moment they feel attracted to a woman, they know this in a few seconds, maybe even less. So this happens very, very fast. And one of the main parts of the sexual center would be reproduction, to keep the species alive. But there is also the other part of the spiritual side, which is transmutation. Transmutation is transformation of this sexual energy and transforming it into spiritual energy. So taking something very dense and strong and intense and crude and turn it into something divine and pure. And how we can harmonize this center would be through chastity. Chastity is not something, a lot of people with this word automatically go to not engaging in sexual activity, not having that at all. But that isn't the case in the esoteric experience or perspective. There, it is like this, that we harness the energy, the sexual energy, and transform it in something else. Ignoring this impulse would be even worse than everything, because we then degenerate sexually. We then become very perverted. But transforming this energy is something different. So it is like in alchemy, which is said to transform this lead into gold. And this is symbolic for the lead of our personality to the gold of the spiritual, of the virtues, to transform them. And we do that through this energy. Of course, transmutation through pranayama, which is a breathing technique for people that want to do that, to transform those energies. And alchemy, which is again turning lead into gold. It's something practical, not theoretical. We will discuss this very deeply in a different lesson because it is a big topic. So, I'm sorry for the noise, but yes, we are finished. I hope you could learn something. I hope this helped. And if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. Yes, thank you a lot for listening, and hope to see you soon. Take care.